The bitter winter winds howled across the prairie, and inside, huddled near the dying embers of a fire, clutching her two children close as their small bellies growled louder than the storm outside. For the pantry was bare, the last loaf of bread eaten 2 days before, and hope itself seemed to have vanished with her husband who had died 6 months earlier in a mining cave-in, leaving her nothing but debts, despair, and the heavy burden of survival. And on that night, when the snow piled high against the cabin walls, she realized she could no longer bear the sound of her children crying themselves to sleep, and so with trembling hands she wrapped them in rags and stepped outside, her heart aching with every step, whispering prayers into the frozen darkness that anyone would hear. And as if heaven itself answered, through the veil of snow appeared a lone rider, tall in the saddle, his broad shoulders cloaked against the storm, his hat pulled low, his eyes sharp and steady. And when he dismounted, his boots crunching in the snow, Eliza fell to her knees, her tears freezing as they fell. And in a voice cracked with desperation she begged, "Please, take my children, take them away before this land swallows them. I beg you." But the cowboy, weathered by years of dust, danger, and lonely trails, looked at her with a kind of strength she had never known. "But I'll take you too, for no mother should be left behind to die alone." The days that followed were a test of endurance as the cowboy, whose name she soon learned was Luke, guided them across frozen plains and over rivers glazed with ice, his horse carrying the children while Eliza walked beside him, her feet blistered, her body frail, but her spirit fighting to rise again each time she looked into his steady eyes. And though Luke spoke little, each action revealed the kind of man he was. For when the children cried in the night, he gave them his blanket, and when their food ran short, he hunted in silence, returning with rabbits or venison, never once letting them feel abandoned, never once allowing despair to settle too deeply. And yet the land did not yield easily, for one night a pack of wolves followed their trail, their howls echoing in the darkness, and Eliza, clutching her children close, thought the end had come. But Luke stood tall with his rifle, eyes narrowed, his voice steady as he whispered, "Stay behind me." And when the wolves lunged, he fired shot after shot, each crack echoing through the canyons until the beasts scattered into the night, leaving only smoke curling from the barrel of his gun and silence, heavy with gratitude. And in that silence Eliza felt something stir in her heart she had long thought dead, not just relief, but a trust, a glimmer of safety. As if this cowboy carried more than a rifle, he carried a promise, one she did not yet understand but felt stronger, with each step they took together toward a future she dared hope for. When at last the snow began to melt and the prairie opened into wide stretches of grass and sky, they reached Luke's ranch, a modest spread of cattle, fences, and a weathered cabin that stood like a sentinel against the horizon. And for the first time in months, Eliza's children laughed freely, chasing chickens in the yard while Luke saddled down his horse. And though she tried to hide her tears, the weight of all she had endured came rushing back. Grief for her husband, shame for her weakness, fear of what tomorrow might hold. And one evening, as the sun set in blazing orange, she sat on the porch, her face buried in her hands, whispering, "Why would you save us? We're nothing but mouths to feed, nothing but trouble." But Luke, who had been repairing a fence nearby, walked over, his boots heavy on the wooden steps, and with the quiet dignity of a man who knew suffering himself, he removed his hat and said, "Ma'am, I've seen plenty of broken things out here on the frontier, fences, cattle, and you're not trouble, you're the strongest woman I've ever met. You just don't know it yet." And those words, spoken with no charm or flourish, struck deeper than any poetry. For in that moment Eliza realized that though she had lost much, though her past lay in ashes, there was still something left to build, and maybe, just maybe, this cowboy who had carried her through storm and hunger could carry her into a future she no longer feared. Just as hope began to take root, danger returned, for the land was not without its enemies. And one hot afternoon smoke rose from the hills, not from lightning or accident, but from a rival rancher named McGraw, a greedy man who sought to drive Luke off the land and claim it for himself. And when the flames raced down the valley like a roaring beast, Luke saddled his horse, grabbed his rifle, and shouted for Eliza to take the children to the creek bed. But she, no longer the fragile woman who begged for her children's lives, stood her ground, refusing to let him face it alone. And together they fought the fire through the night, hauling buckets, cutting fences, driving cattle away from the blaze, their faces blackened with soot, their hands blistered, until at last, when the dawn rose pink over the smoking valley, the fire had died and the ranch still stood, battered but unbroken. And as Luke slumped against the corral fence, his chest heaving, Eliza knelt beside him, her hands trembling as she whispered, "You could have left us, you could have chosen an easier life, but you didn't." And he looked at her, his eyes tired but fierce, and answered, "I didn't choose the easy road. Ma'am, I chose the right one, and I'd choose it again, every time." And in that moment, as the children ran to them with tear-streaked faces and the ashes of the prairie settled into silence, free, ready for the love that had been quietly growing like a seed. Through the storm, the seasons turned, the ranch healed, and life began anew beneath the wide western sky, her children running barefoot through fields of wildflowers, their laughter echoing across the land, and Luke, steady as ever, working beside her, teaching the boys to ride, showing her how to mend fences, how to find strength not just in survival but in living. She found herself standing beside him at the fence line, her hands slipping into his rough, calloused palm, and in a voice trembling not with fear but with love, she whispered, "I gave you my children because I thought I had nothing left, but you gave me back everything, even my heart." And Luke, quiet, steady, unshakable, lifted her hand to his lips and said simply, "Then we'll ride this trail together, you, me, and the little ones, endless and free." Eliza knew that she had not just survived the storm. She had found her forever home in the arms of a cowboy who chose not just to save her children, but to save her too. And friends, if this story of grit, sacrifice, and love beneath the Wild West sky touched your soul, don't write off just yet. Hit that subscribe button and join us for more Legends of the Frontier, where every sunset holds another tale worth remembering.